9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Look at these awesome people flying into the show. We got Flying Ham, Mr. T, Shane and Lynn Jordan, Saturday Night Smoke entering the studio. Eric Kirk is here as well. So thank you, everybody, joining. Good morning, everybody. Eric is calling in, and we're going to be interviewing today the one, the only, the Podfather. Now, as far as names go, I love the Podfather show. I think it's a great name. The only name that I think even compares to that is back in the day, rest in peace, we had the Pod God that used to be here as well. And I see that the Podfather is in the studio. Hopefully you guys can hear me loud and clear. My internet signal seems like it's good. Eric, how you doing, my friend? Hopefully everything's going well.
I'm doing good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. And we got the Podfather calling in. Hope everyone is having a good week after Christmas. We've got New Year's Eve coming up this upcoming Friday. And I'll tell you, I've got my plan set for New Year's Eve. Now, my plans are, get ready for this. I'm the wild one. Now, I'm kind of crazy. I don't know if any of you guys can keep up with me. But on New Year's Eve, I'm going to get up from the couch, walk into the kitchen, probably open the refrigerator, get some food, maybe have a drink, maybe have a gummy. I'm kind of one of those guys that enjoys my weed gummies here in Massachusetts, and then head back to the couch and watch Netflix because I'm crazy like that. I'm a guy that gets out there and I party all the time, and I'm an old man, let's face it. Now, I want all of you to do me a favor. I know Eric is very good at remembering everybody's birthday, and I know he remembers my birthday. Now, for all of you on January 2nd, I would like all of you to ignore my birthday because I'm now 53 and I'm turning 54, and these birthdays now are getting kind of troubling where I'm getting this old. So, forget about it. I like that. That's exactly what I want to think about for my birthday. Forget it. Ignore it. That's my plan. So I want nothing to do with it. For me, my birthday is just another day. I'm just going to skip over to the next day and exclude that altogether. So, hey, before we get to the Podfather, which is the coolest name ever, Eric, let me talk to you real quick. How are things going, brother?
I'm doing very good so far. It's a rainy day here in Georgia.
What's the temperature in Georgia today?
I hadn't really checked, but it doesn't feel like overly cold. Probably somewhere in the mid 50s.
That's not too bad. I see Flying Ham said like close to 70. Yeah, for us up here, I don't even know what the temperature is, but yeah, right here it's rainy, it's cloudy. I'm actually looking out the window right now. We had a little bit of snow on the ground this morning, but we really have had a pretty warm December. I mean, I think here on Saturday it's going to be up near 60, which is kind of crazy for January in Massachusetts. And the one thing I've been saying is, I'm never one to argue about global warming. If we have global warming, I'd like to see them let it go for like another 20 years. So maybe I could actually enjoy the weather where I live and not have to actually relocate someplace. Because really, Massachusetts, with the exception of it being an extremely liberal state, I don't love that. The weather kind of sucks in the winter, but for the rest of the year, it's actually a pretty good place to live, for the most part. So yeah, that's right, Glenn. He's got that whole Celsius thing going. I don't even know what the hell that is. I have to literally, when someone tells me Celsius, I have to like Google it and like look it up so I can figure out the comparison between the two. So, hey, listen, without further ado, I know everyone turned in not to listen to me ramble like I usually do, but today we've got Vinny, the one, the only, the Podfather on today, and I am pumped for this interview. So, Vinny, without further ado, brother, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me on. How you guys doing?
Good. Now, I got to say, I'm looking at the picture. Now, I see here, if that's you, pretty good-looking guy here. So we've got, so ladies, I don't know if you're married or not, but if we have any ladies coming in, maybe Vinny might be a guy to target, kind of an attractive guy, and obviously with a great podcast. So are you a married man or single?
I'm technically single. I do have a significant other, but I am technically single. I am not married.
Okay. Now, how old are you? You look like you're a relatively young guy.
I appreciate that. I age well. I'm actually 46.
Really? I would not have guessed that. So 46 years old. So you're kind of close to me. You haven't hit the big 50 yet like I have. How you feeling about 50 being right around the corner?
Man, I got to say, as long as I continue to feel the same physically that I do now and I don't get any worse, then, hey, I'm all for it. Bring it on.
Right. That's kind of how I feel too, honestly. I joke about my age a lot, but I would say at this point in my life, I am probably finally the happiest I've ever been in my life. I mean, your teens, your 20s, even your 30s, you're still trying to figure things out. 40s, you're busy as hell, with your career and things. I mean, I'm finally at a point now where I'm kind of, in a lot of ways, happy. And I guess now that I'm happy, that's when the decline health-wise will begin over the next 10 or 20 years. So I guess that's kind of how it rolls. So, hey, man, if you could, tell me a little bit about your podcast and tell the listeners here what your show is about. And then I've got a bunch of questions I want to ask you. So why don't you tell us about yourself and tell us about your show?
Well, I'll talk about anything really as on my podcast goes. I do like to focus around the political arena and current events. But I'm naturally drawn to anything controversial. I've always been one to love a good debate, but a true debate, not an argument. A true debate of, I guess you could say, facts and considerations and ideologies. All come together to form a stance to determine, if an ideology does have merit, credit, or weight. But even in high school, I was constantly, asked by, my English teacher, who was also the high school debate teacher, just constantly, almost begging me to join the debate team. She's like, hey, you got this voice that carries, you do really good in class and stuff. But strangely enough, I just wasn't interested in it then. It was high school. I was only interested in girls at that point. And as you said, and I truly don't mean to sound, like I'm full of myself or anything, but it was a good looking guy, so it wasn't a problem chasing girls, and I didn't have to chase them very far. So, those extracurricular activities aside from, maybe wrestling or something like that, it just weren't my thing.
And I hear you, brother. Throughout my 20s, I'm like I said, an older guy now, but I played college football and same thing. I chase girls a lot. So I still think a lot, kind of to steal a line from Tommy Boy a little bit. I think my brain in my 20s was clogged with like malted hops, bong resin, and leftover sperm from whatever was left after the number of girls that I used to kind of fool around with back in the day. But, it was funny. I got advice when I was young from my grandmother. And, she said to me point blank, she was like, listen, for you, men, I don't think they should get married until they're a little bit older. I didn't get married till I was 33. And she was like, run around in your 20s, have a good time, get it out of your system. And if you do that, then you're most likely not going to feel like you missed anything as you get a little bit older. So for me, I did exactly that. Listened to grandma's advice. And I got married at 33, first kid at 35. I've got 4 kids now. My oldest is 19 down to my youngest, who's still in 7th grade. But I honestly don't feel like I missed anything. And I had a damn good time, when I was younger. So I think that's a kind of a good way to look at life, is run around and just enjoy yourself while you can. Now you mentioned you like to go after like controversial topics. You and I are going to get along just fine because that's exactly how I am also. Now, your podcast, are you more conservative? Are you more liberal? Are you in the middle? Does it depend on the topic? Explain what your show is about.
I'm more right versus wrong.
Okay.
No,
I like that.
I am a conservative, or I guess you could almost even say a constitutionalist with conservative, leaning mindsets and values.
Nice.
Yeah, I am naturally drawn to controversial subjects, usually because they are, hotly centered around, right versus wrong. And all my life, I've been the type of person where even if I don't like you, or even if we just had an argument yesterday, if you're in a situation today and you're being wronged, I'll take up for you. I will. I'll defend your stance, if you're in the right, whether I like you or not. And that's just been my nature my entire life. So I found that I've easily carried that mindset over into podcasts too. And now, while I've recently started doing lives, up until, this past year, I've only done pre-recorded shows. But I've recently started doing lives, and I found that, I've been able to, I guess, migrate into other topics as well, to a little more unscripted, and kind of go with the flow type thing. And found that I do enjoy doing other topics. I've covered things from like the Mandela effect. I've got a show coming up, about pet peeves and things like that. So I enjoy doing those as well too. But, my heart will always be with the controversial subjects.
So jumping right into that, how do you feel things are going right now in this country? And I'm not going to, throw my opinions at you. I may respond to you after the fact, but I mean, I guess, we're a year into Biden's presidency. We are dealing with COVID. I'd like to hear kind of your state of the state. How do you feel things are going right now?
Man, it's a dumpster fire in the middle of the ocean.
Damn right.
Damned if you do and damned if you don't. It's you put out the dumpster fire and you're going to have to deal with the smell from all the burning garbage. But if you let it burn, you're going to sink and drown. I mean, it's just we're in a no-win situation at this point. The country's a mess, and it's the political party's fault on both sides. It is, but Republicans are just to blame as the Democrats are, and I say that not because hey, I'm defending the Democrats, because I mean, let's face it, it's only gotten worse since they've taken control. But I say that it's a Republicans' fault too, because they're not doing anything about it. They're just sitting there and letting it happen and just ignoring the situation from the sidelines, and that's not what we voted them in for. It's a mess, and nobody's doing their job. And quite honestly, if I can say so on your show,
please,
pisses me off.
Yeah, no, speak your mind. You're totally welcome to speak your mind here. Mike, welcome, brother. No, I'll tell you, one of the things that really pissed my wife off the other day, and I don't know if you've been in my show or not, I've been kind of very spotty doing shows lately. And like you said earlier too, I record some shows, I do some live. It kind of depends on my mood, what I feel like doing. Sometimes I don't feel like interacting with people. Other times I do. But my wife voted for Biden. I voted for Trump. And my wife's a physician. So she's a doctor. And she's been working her ass off over the last 2 years during this pandemic. I mean, working at COVID tents. She's seen the worst of the worst with people getting sick, people dying, etc. The other night, when Biden kind of washed his hands of the whole COVID thing and sent things back to the state, she was livid. I mean, my wife is, 5 feet tall, 100 and whatever pounds. I won't admit that on the air because she'd probably kill me if she knows I said it. But I mean, she was bullshit saying, so that's it. After all the stuff we've been through now, he's just going to wash his hands of this and send it back to the States. And it's just kind of crazy. But I agree with what you just said, where right now we have people fighting back and forth. So I think in our country, we need to learn how to unite again, because I've been, I guess, in some cases part of the problem, and I don't want to be part of the problem. And I do really love the way you kind of framed what you said also, where I do like to try to go after what I feel is wrong in society. And I try to bring that to light and talk about it. And I love that you said that, because I'm kind of a constitutionalist also that kind of slants right now. But there have been times where I was Democrat. I voted for Bill Clinton twice. I've gone both ways. Right now, I think I'm just frustrated by the way this country is being run. I'm frustrated that we don't have term limits. There are so many things that need to be fixed. But do you have any idea? I mean, what can we do to fix the division in this country right now? I mean, what can we do to repair it, in your opinion?
The people have to start ignoring the media and have to start ignoring the politicians, and we have to fix our relationship with one another first. And that's across the board, with all of the hot topics from, the political divide to religious divide to racial divide. I mean, we have to just suck it up and come together and stop arguing with one another, stop blaming one another. I'm not saying ignore that there's problems. Yes, clearly there's problems, but we're not going to fix them until we come together as a single unit. And only then will we be able to talk to each other and truly hear each other's feelings, truly get a sense for each other's, I guess, to be able to have empathy for one another. And then we'll get to a stage to where it's like, okay, now I understand what you need. Now you understand what I need. Now we can truly mend this together, heal together, and then we can go after the bigger problem together as one unit. And that's the only way we're going to fix this country. We're arguing amongst each other, and that's right where they want us. And meanwhile, while we're over here fighting each other's with clubs and brass knuckles and name calling, the politicians are off on the sideline getting rich and doing what they want and laughing at us. And it's quite embarrassing that more people don't see this. It really is.
I give you a little applause on that one, because I agree with you 100%. this is something we've talked about, several times on my show, where I talk about how the rich and the powerful want to divide and conquer us. Going right back to Sun Tzu, The Art of War, if they can divide and conquer us, as we've talked about, Democrat, Republican, gay versus straight, black versus white, on and on and on. If they're able to do that, then we are easy to be controlled. And Crazy Lady says it, the media is fake news. In my opinion, I thought about this the other night. In my opinion, right now, the media, I do believe, is our greatest single enemy in this world right now, because it's just a narrative. They push a narrative and they push it. You have a certain segment of the population that understands what is being sold to them as a line of BS. But then you have the vast majority that looks and they just believe. They don't understand that the media is lying to them. They believe that the media reports news, and really they don't. They report spin and they report propaganda, and they are dividing our country like I've never seen. Now, when you mention your age as being 46, I had Matt from the Wicked Awesome podcast on the other day. He's 50. And I think one thing that society's forgotten a little bit, and maybe it's because of social media, is that you can disagree and you can argue, but still respect each other and get along. And I think that's something that Generation X did very well, where you could have a disagreement with somebody, but that doesn't mean you don't like the person. You can like them, get along with them, and still respect them. And it sounds like that's what you're saying, that we have to kind of get back to, maybe having disagreements, but still putting those disagreements behind us so we can unite and work together. I mean, is that correct or accurate?
Yes, it is. Generation X, which I'm proudly a part of, had this ritual, I like to call it. We'd take each other out in the schoolyard, or, down the road, or to a friend's backyard or something like that before the parents got home. And if you had a disagreement with someone, you'd just pummel the shit out of them. Right. Each person just pummel the shit out of each other. But when it was done and over with, they got up and shook friends, and you'd see those same two people at school the next day eat lunch together. And quite often they were then best friends. We in this country, the people collectively, we're done pummeling shit out of each other. We get it. Everybody's mad at each other for something, but it's time to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and be friends. It's time. I mean, we're not going anywhere. The constant arguing and bickering and blaming and finger pointing hasn't fixed anything yet. It's not going to next week either.
No. And if you think about it, I mean, it doesn't really matter who becomes president next. I mean, I don't think it's going to be Biden, obviously. Cognitively, he's not going to be able to. So just going forward, 3 years from now, if it's Kamala, if it's Hillary, if it's Trump, if it's DeSantis, no matter who it is, we're going to continue to have the fighting in the dissension. I mean, this is going to be ongoing, and it's going to continue, I think, until the American people finally wise up and say enough is enough, and we learn to work together. So how do we do it though? I mean, how do we get to that point? I mean, I guess it's good for you and I to get on here and have this narrative, but I mean, let's face it, this is a small podcast. We've had 30 people come in so far. It'll probably get a couple hundred downloads. You have your show. I mean, none of us are Joe Rogan or any of those people. How does the small guy step up and try to fix this problem that we have in our country right now?
Like you said, I mean, we got to start doing what we're doing right now. Maybe in a way, people like myself are even to blame. I'm drawn to controversial topics, and to be completely honest, that doesn't fix the situation either. It's what I'm drawn to, but it's it's what a lot of people are drawn to. It's why the media, it focuses on these things, because it makes money, it draws attention, but at the end of the day, it doesn't fix the problem. It doesn't even offer a solution. But we have a rare opportunity right now to where podcasts, although they've been around for a while, they're relatively speaking still in their infancy. There's so much room for podcast show hosts to grow, especially over the last 2 years, with the climate and everybody being at home all the time. A lot of new podcast shows have risen up and stuff, myself included. And I think maybe if people like myself, if I'm going to point any fingers, I've got 4 others pointing back at me. If we start to focus on ways to fix things, and maybe draw people together. But unfortunately, a lot of people aren't attracted to that type of conversation, right? Because people want to be mad, so in the beginning, we're only going to get the attention of the people that feel the same way that I do and you do, so But as that crowd grows, if we can get a lot of other people on board, and maybe a way to offer them a voice too, as people see us grow and become more of a norm, then maybe we can start to sway other people too. I mean, it takes time to sway people's minds with good attention and love and respect and stuff. But people can be won over if you stay at it. And wow, it's kind of an epiphany. Maybe it's, for myself even, maybe I need to switch directions. Who knows? But I think we need to find a way to bring us all together in order to do that.
It's funny you said that, because a lot of people here have listened to me over the last couple of years, however long it's been, a little short of 2 years, I think. And I started this at the beginning of the pandemic, and I was a broadcasting major back in college, and I wanted to try doing a podcast. And I've enjoyed it at times, and other times I've gotten sick of it. There are times where I just don't want to do it. You have someone like the old man, I give him credit, he's on every day. There are weeks where I just don't feel like doing this. So that's kind of what it comes down to. And over the fall, I kind of stopped doing podcasts quite a bit. And, at one point I announced on Twitter that I was done. I was going to end the podcast. I was done. And I meant it when I said it. And part of the reason is because exactly what you're saying right now, I felt like maybe, I'm part of the problem. And I don't want to be part of the problem. I talked to Jeremy Cummings about it, who had a great podcast. In my opinion, it's a shame he quit. He's 29 years old. He's very talented. I could see him being a big podcaster because he's young and he's got a great voice and he's very smart. But he quit for the same reason. He's a religious guy, and he was saying that he felt like he was part of the problem. And I think it was probably his conversations with me. I'm like, damn it, I think I am too. And that's why I've been trying not to get on the road of just bashing, Biden and bashing the left all the time. But I do feel very strongly that the path we're going down in this country right now is the wrong path. And, people have called me, oh, you're a racist. You don't believe in this. You don't believe in that. It's not true. I believe that everyone in this country, whether you're gay, whether you're straight, whether you're black, white, Asian, whatever you are, you have a right to have a job, have a family, get an education, live a good life. But there are a lot of things that the Democratic Party has done that I don't agree with. And I do believe that they are trying to take more and more control of our life on a regular basis. So for me, it's kind of like a fine line where I want to speak up about the things I believe, but I also don't want to be adding to that narrative where I'm just making people angry all the time, So, well, I appreciate that, Mike. He said, John, you're part of the solution. You helped me a lot, brother. That really means a lot to me, Mike. I have a great deal of respect for you. You're a good man. I don't get into your podcast all the time, but when I do get in, you do a very nice job. And that means a lot to me. So thank you for saying that, and I hope that it's true. I really hope that the shows that I do, make a difference. So I do appreciate that. So now you mentioned, Vinny, some of the controversial topics that you like to talk about. And we just kind of got off talking about, we don't want to be part of the problem. But I think it's important for us to address things that we feel that are a problem. So I guess if you're looking at society right now, maybe some of the things we haven't talked about, aside from the division, what other issues do you see us having right now? Do you think getting a new president in is going to solve the problem? Do you think term limits will solve the problem? I'd just like to hear some of the issues that are really bothering you right now, and we can talk about those.
Man, one of the things that one of the answers that I have for this, and in today's climate with the way Big Brother is, I'm often scared to say this, but as far as the political arena goes, I really think that the government needs to fear consequences for their actions. And I think the reason why they act the way they do is like a child that doesn't ever have any discipline, because they don't fear consequences for their actions. They know they can do whatever they want, and nobody's going to do anything other than complain. But when the government realizes that there is consequences for their actions, then and only then are they going to stop doing things that they're not supposed to be doing. We can complain all we want all day long, but all we're going to do is draw one figurative line in the sand after another. And every time they step over it, we're going to step back 2 feet, draw another line and say, hey, don't cross that one. And then they'll step over that and we'll step back 2 feet and say, oh, I mean it this time. Don't step over that one. And it never ends. And before long, we've got our backs against the wall, and we're almost there now.
No, I think you're right. I think that if you think back now, you mentioned again the Constitution a little bit earlier. I'm a guy that very much believes in the Constitution, and it's funny that people will come out and say that they believe that's an outdated document. I mean, I could not say that anything is further from the truth. I mean, granted, this was written, quite some time ago, but the bottom line is the men that wrote that document were brilliant, brilliant, brilliant men, and they wrote a document based on the experiences they had in living under a tyrannical regime. And they created this document to make sure that as we declared our freedom, we would be able to live in a free country moving forward. And they put safeguards in that document to make sure that we did have that ability. Now, I get it. I get it when there are school shootings and when there are people walking into movie theaters and shooting people. I get why people are upset, and I get why people say there are too many guns. But as I've said time and time again, the Second Amendment is in that Constitution for a reason, and it's not there so someone can go duck hunting. It's in there so we can protect ourselves in the event there is a tyrannical government. And if you look at cases like Australia and other places where they've taken the guns, the people there have no recourse. And then, the argument is, well, if the government drops a nuclear bomb on you, what good's an AR-15 going to do? That's true. But the bottom line is a government is going to be nervous about attacking their own country and their own people when you've got 600 million guns in the population that people can use to fight back against their oppressors. And there are so many things that just bother me about our government. I mean, when they wrote the Constitution, I mean, Congress was not meant to be a job where you made $300,000 a year. You got lifetime medical, you got lifetime stock options, you got lifetime retirement. You made millions and millions from companies that are donating. The members of Congress were meant to be people who were farmers, people who worked in the community, who volunteered, in a sense, to serve their country as a servant of the people. And unfortunately, the politicians are no longer servants of the people. They are overlords that are controlling every aspect of their life. So one of the things I feel that would help, and of course, it's not going to happen. They're never going to vote it in. We need to, fight for it. But I think that we need to have term limits. We need to have, instead of a $300,000 salary, make it a $75,000 a year salary. If they get medical, put them on the same medical that the rest of the country gets. Put them on Medicare. Don't give them a pension. If the rest of the people are saving in 401ks, make them save in 401ks. It shouldn't be like this lifestyle where you've got people on both sides, Democrat and Republican, that have been in office for 40 and 50 years. Now, do you think would term limits begin to solve a problem, or is it bigger than that?
I think it would end a lot of the corruption. I do. Term limits would be a good thing for every single political office imaginable. Term limits would absolutely be a good thing. All the way from Congress and Supreme Court, all the way down to, federal judges even and stuff. I mean, of course, yes, they already have, term limits, but I'm saying that it needs to be across the board. Absolutely. Term limits would be really good. It would fix a lot of the corruption, especially financial corruption and payoffs and stuff like that. People like Nancy Pelosi and her husband, buying all these stocks, strangely, and then 6 months later they skyrocket and stuff repeatedly over. And I mean, she got 100% win streak. They go and they buy 30,000 shares of a stock, which she's not supposed to legally be doing anyway. And then 6 months later, she gains, $20 million off of it, and she does it over and over and over and over again. Clearly, there's companies and corporations and people that, are getting favors from these people. Hey, pass this law, that benefits my company, and, hey, buy my stock in the meantime, and that's your payoff, So it's, term limits, I think would stop a lot of that. Granted, there would be times that, maybe an election for something as serious as Congress, could be halted for a few months. Say if we're in the middle of a national crisis or something, you don't want to bring a fresh face into the middle of a conversation, so to speak. You want to, keep, those people, unless they're the ones causing the problem, obviously. I mean, there's extenuating circumstances for everything. But yeah, term limits would absolutely be good. In short answer, something else that I think that we need, and I've preached this for years. I think we need a constitutional law enforcement agency to where they are the highest ranking law enforcement officers of the land. They're their sole responsibility is to make sure that the laws of the Constitution are enforced among the political leaders. They're the ones that have the legal authority to go in and arrest Secret Service, or they're the ones that have the legal authority to go in and arrest, federal judges or members of Congress or even the president. Those people are the ones that would be given that authority, because any other time, you got to wait for judges to approve something, or somebody to do something else. You got to, rub elbows and shake hands and stuff. And oftentimes, most oftentimes it don't get done because, nobody wants to upset, a political, member and end up losing their position because, that somebody got arrested for doing wrong. But, I think, something along the lines of a constitutional law enforcement agency would be excellent if implemented in that manner.
I'd never thought about that, and I love the idea. I think that's a brilliant idea, and I think that is something that actually, without a doubt, should happen. So that's a great idea for our country, and hopefully, maybe at some point, that will gain some traction and maybe go in the right direction. Now, I want to get into in a little bit. I want to ask you some stuff about your life in general, aside from politics. But before I do that, I want to ask you one more question, and I may have a few more later. Who knows? But do you feel that the previous election was stolen? Do you think that the left cheated, or is that
absolutely? Absolutely. People say there's no evidence. There's no evidence. There is. There may not be any proof, but that's only because nobody will truly hear the evidence. People often mistake, that there is indeed a difference between evidence and proof. Evidence is a collection of circumstances that's presented, and then it's determined whether or not they're true. And if it's true, then they become proof. There's all kinds of evidence. We've all seen the videos. I laugh at the people that say there's no evidence, and they say, well, there's no video. Everybody's seen those videos. Everyone has. I don't care who you are. Everyone has seen those videos. If you're holding a supercomputer in your hand, aka smartphone, you've seen the videos. And to deny that the evidence exists is just, it's a denial of facts. It is a fact that those videos exist. It's clear evidence. Yes, I wholeheartedly believe that the election was stolen.
I do as well. And when you look at the video, like you said, and the thing of it for me is, I'm sure that a lot of people had the same experience. I went to bed that night and Trump was killing him. It wasn't even close. It was a blowout. I went to bed pretty late that night saying, great, Trump's back. We get 4 more years. Thank God we're not going to have to deal with Biden. I woke up the next morning, turned on the news like everybody else did, I'm sure, expecting to get the confirmation. And then I saw what had happened. I'm like, what in the hell happened? How is this possible? And then when you see the videos of them shutting down the voting, them pulling the giant suitcases out from tables when the voting was shut down and running those things through the machine, it was obvious. And the thing that drives me crazy is the left kind of gaslights us, and they like to make us believe that we're all crazy for thinking that. And in my opinion, it's so obvious. And I know there are people that disagree, and that's okay. We don't have to agree on it. But just from what I've seen, to me, it's obvious that
if the tables were turned, those people would be surrounding the Capitol building and the White House with pitchforks and torches, and they freaking know it.
Well, but according to the left, that's okay. Because if you remember the summer riots, you can burn down cities, burn down buildings, burn down police cars, shoot projectiles at police officers, and literally do billions of dollars worth of damage to different places. But if you have a bunch of people march on the Capitol and they are welcomed into the building by the police officers opening the gates and saying, hey guys, come on in, and then they single file walk into the building. Now, granted, eventually that day got out of hand and there were people climbing up the building. There were people doing things they shouldn't have done. But the bottom line is, I don't understand how what happened over the summer was not considered riots. They were peaceful protests. But what happened on January 6th is considered the worst insurgents in the history of our country since Pearl Harbor. It's just the double standard, I think, is what angers people. And that's what they see. At least be fair both ways.
Well, what wasn't it? I think 2015 when I think it was Antifa or BLM, or maybe both, but a group from the left, nonetheless. They themselves stormed the Capitol building, and nobody talks about that. It's like nobody even remembers it. But hey, the left has done it too. You didn't hear the people on the right, shaming them for years afterwards. When it comes down to it, if you have a grievance against your government, you're supposed to take it to them. That means that you're not supposed to burn down innocent store owners' buildings. You're supposed to take it to the government. And that's what they did in 2015. I think it's 2000, maybe it's 2016. And that's what we did. You're supposed to take it to the government. That's the right way to do it. Yes, it did get out of hand, but there are videos that surfaced of when they first entered that building. They were walking in single file lines, staying inside the walkway ropes, for crying out loud.
They had those little felt walkway ropes, and
people
were literally walking through those, taking pictures and everything. And you saw the officers. The officers pulled the gates back and said, "Come on, guys, come in." Now, I was thinking about that because I had thought about going that day. I thought about driving down just so my children could experience, something like this. And I thank God I didn't, because it turned into obviously this terrible event. But if I had been in the front of that line, and the officer pulled the gate back and said, "Okay, hey, come on in. We're going to let you in," I would have gone in. I wouldn't have thought anything of it. I would have been like, "Oh, okay, so we're being allowed in. Maybe we'll have a chance to speak to somebody. We're being permitted in the building." I would have never thought that I was.
That's a reasonable assumption.
Right.
That's a very reasonable assumption.
It was a setup.
If the police pull back the stanchions, the crowd control stanchions, that's what they're called. If police pull back the crowd control stanchions and wave you in, I would naturally assume, even if I was there, and Biden was in the room, and it's like I would naturally assume it's like, oh, maybe they do want to hear our voice. Maybe, our political leaders finally do that. That would be my first assumption. And I think that's the assumption they had too, because again, you can see in the video, they politely walked in single file line and they stayed within the stanchions. I mean, they had purely peaceful intent when they first entered the building.
It was nothing different than seeing a group of children walking down the aisleway of a school with the teacher leading them to the lunchroom. They were in a single file line. They were being respectful, with the exception of cameras taking pictures of being in there. That was pretty much it. So it was just crazy. So we're going to get back to politics in a second. I'm going to try to keep this at about an hour, maybe a little bit shorter. So we're at 36 minutes now. We got a little bit of time left, but I don't want to skip over asking you a little bit about yourself. Now, I know you've got the podcast. Now, tell me a little bit, if you could, about yourself, the person. Where did you grow up? Tell me about your life growing up a little bit. Tell me a little bit about where you are now in your life. You said you're dating someone. Were you ever married? Whatever you're comfortable telling me. I'd like to hear more about you, the person. So go ahead, and I'm just going to let you fly.
Man, I'm one of those people that has such a broad story to tell, and I've done and seen so many things that I often don't like to say it all in a single conversation, simply because people are like, man, this guy's just showboating at this point. But I mean, I've seen and done a lot in my life. I've traveled the country extensively. I've been to something like 38, 39 states now. And most of those, roughly 26, 27 of them were by the time I was 21 years old.
Wow.
I've done a lot of traveling.
Personally now, just so you know who I am, I love that. I'm one of those people that believes that in life, if someone has had great experiences, they've got a great life, they've got great whatever, I'm grateful for that, to hear the story. I mean, I don't understand why people sometimes get envious and judgmental of people when they've led a good life. To me, I think it's interesting. I love to hear your experiences, because that's kind of how I am. I go out and do pretty much what I want to do, and not in a bad way, but I try to experience life. Like for me, the podcast was something I wanted to do, so I'm doing it. I've had a successful life in business. I've done that. I've traveled the US, I've traveled the world. I've been in 7 movies now. So there are a lot of things that I do. And when I made one mistake when I was young, and I didn't pursue baseball like I should have. And I was a very good player. I think I could have at least played in the minor leagues. I focused on football, played football in college instead. And that has been a regret of mine my entire life. So I have determined for the rest of my life that I'm not going to have any regrets by the time I lay on that bed, except for that one regret. If there's anything I want to do, I'm going to do it. If there are things I'm afraid of, I'm going to try it. I don't want to live my life full of regret. It sounds like you've had a very full life where you've done a lot of things. So I want to let you know that the people in my show accept that. And I would love to hear about whatever you'd like to tell us. So yeah,
sure.
There you go.
It wasn't until I got older, in fact, even somewhat recently, reflecting back on my family and everything, and realized that we had a little bit more money than what I thought we did growing up. Growing up, we had a very poor lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't, one of those, hey, sob is me, hey, feel sorry for me stories or anything like that. I'm just answering your question. That's the only reason why I'm bringing this up, so it's, because when you ask questions like that, everybody comes forward. So I had a hard life. Everybody did. It seems like nobody had a good life, so it's, and again, going back to what I said earlier, that's why I'm sometimes reluctant to answer these kind of questions, but you seem really genuine, and, I know, and I trust Eric, so I'm comfortable with answering some of these. So, but growing up, we had especially before my mom and the guy she got with, who I now call dad, got together. Yeah, we did indeed have a poor lifestyle then. My first bed that I can even remember was a bunk bed. I was the only child at home. I had a brother and sister, but they were already moved out. But my first bed that I can remember was a bunk bed, despite being an only child. And the reason why I got that is because the neighbors were throwing it out. And, and of course, my mom being a single mom, working as a waitress, making, like $1.80 something an hour at that time, I think it was, and surviving on tips, she didn't have money, and so, yeah, we had a poor lifestyle. And my first bed was gotten out of the garbage. And I laugh about it now, but I grew up sleeping in another kid's piss stains. So they weren't even mine. I was sleeping in another kid's piss stains. That's how poor we were. I can remember times of, we have bread with mills and stuff, and having to pick the mold off the bread just to be able to have bread with our mills. Yeah, we were poor growing up, but then when my mom met, the guy who I called dad now, he passed away recently, but my biological dad's still alive. But the guy that I called dad now, when she got with him, life got a little bit better, He had a good job. He was a factory worker, blue collar worker, but he made good money. It was really good handling his money too. So life got a little bit better. That's when we began to travel the country and everything. And I got to see a lot. I got to see everything from California to, Louisiana and everything in between, everything west of the Mississippi. I got to experience that as a child. And man, it was a blessing. And then growing up, I've done a little bit of everything, really. It's of no real surprise, if you know me and my background and where I've come from, that I've ended up doing something like podcasts, despite having ignored, the teacher's, request to join a debate team in high school. It's no real surprise that I ended up doing this, and I'll probably move on to something after this, unless this takes off. But I'm a student pilot now, flying small aircraft. I haven't done that in a while, especially with the climate, of COVID and everything. That would certainly have made it difficult. But I enjoy flying. I'm a student pilot. I've owned several successful businesses. But for every successful business that I've owned, I've owned 5 failures as well too. You can't be a success without being a. So there, for as glamorous to some as my story may seem, there's a lot of failure in there too. There's a lot of learning and stuff. So
I think anyone that achieves anything in this life fails. I have failed so many times I can't even begin to count. And for anybody that's in here right now, or anybody that listens, via download, don't be afraid of failure. Embrace failure, because failure is something that puts you on the path to being successful. Go out there, learn your lessons from your failures. Everybody fails, and go get it. I think that's the key to successful people, is embracing failure, learning from those failures, and then trying to succeed after that. And, it sounds like you've had that experience, and I have as well.
Yeah. In some regards, I fail every day, but in some regards too, I win every day, but you can't constantly win everything, but as long as you try, you're not going to constantly fail everything either. It's not like, it's true, hey, stars are stacked against you. If you try, you're eventually going to get something right. It's just the laws of mathematics.
Right. Eventually just keep at it. I think most successful people, and I've used this stupid sports analogy over and over again. If you're a baseball player and you bat 100 times, if you get 300 hits, you're in the Hall of Fame, and you've failed 700 times. So, everybody fails. Michael Jordan talks about the number of shots he's missed during his career, the number of big games he's lost by taking the last shot and missing. It happens to everybody. Everybody fails, but you can't stop trying, because I think once you stop trying in life, then you really become a failure. And when I say failure, I mean, that's kind of a hard word or a harsh word. But I think internally, if you stop trying, then you've just kind of given in to the fact that you can't go after what you want. And if you get to that point, then internally, I think you're failing. I mean, I don't view people as failures. I see people who are on the street, who are homeless, and it breaks my heart when I see that, because I'm like, man, that person, for whatever reason, has gotten to the point where they've either just given up or they've had so many bad things happen to them where they can't dig out of the hole they're in. And life will do that to you. Life will beat you down to your knees and keep you there if you're not willing to fight, because you have to fight. So what do you do? What do you do for a living now? Are you working now? Do you own a business now? Are you retired? What do you do?
I do. I own a survival supply company. So I don't want to mix the two and name the company here,
That's fine.
especially today's cancel culture and everything. And I am a controversial person, but I own a survival supply company now. Cool. So
nice. So now you said also you're a student pilot. So are you looking to become a professional pilot or just doing it on your own? Like, do you want to fly jets? Or do you just want to enjoy it?
Purely just a hobby. Purely just a hobby. I mean, I've always loved flying. When I was younger, I wanted to join the military, and I actually wanted to be a helicopter pilot. I couldn't join the military, however, though, because of problems with my back. Back then, medical issues were a big no-no, So it's like, it was something that couldn't be overlooked. Part of me wishes I would have lied about that, but I mean, who knows what kind of trouble that could have gotten me into. But no, I've always wanted to fly. And, just one day, there's an airport here in town, that there's this road that if you drive around town, it takes you past the small airport. And, driving past it constantly. And one day I was just like, you know what? I'm going to pull in here and see what it's about, see if they offer this kind of stuff. So I drive in, completely unscheduled. It's just a spur of the moment thing. I go in, I talk to, the flight instructors and stuff. And I found out that I could sign up right then and there. So I signed up right then and there. And within, 30, 45 minutes, I'm actually out on the runway in the pilot seat of a plane. Yeah. I was like, holy crap, this is cool. So and from the first time I took off in the airplane, I knew, man, I was in love. And it just, it's so exhilarating, man, that just even talking about it now, it's like, it metaphorically makes my mouth water. I mean, I want to get out there and fly. I mean, I love it. One of my favorite small aircraft to fly is it's the Piper Warrior 3. It's the underwing aircraft. It kind of resembles the old World War II, the fighter planes. It's the same similar body style. That's my favorite small aircraft to fly. I'd like to someday maybe own my own, maybe a 6 to 8 seater, take the family on vacation. But that's years down the road, So, but I love flying, and that's one of the things that, regardless of how long of a hiatus I take in between each one, I mean, it's something I'll never stop doing.
Hey, Black Dragons Radio is right on. It's good to have a passion for life. You're absolutely correct. And so how cool is that? I mean, you wake up in the morning one day. Little did you know, when you wake up that morning, you're going to be on the runway, taking off in a damn airplane in the pilot's seat. I mean, that's what's great about life. You never know what's going to happen in your life if you just keep open-minded and you're willing to try new things. And it's funny. Go ahead. You go right ahead.
Well, I've got a really funny story. Like the girl I'm dating now, when we first started dating, I decided, hey, I'm going to take her on a flight. So, we go to the airport and everything, I get with my instructor, and he's there. So, and then, we get out on the runway, and of course, I'm piloting the plane, he's a co-pilot and she's in the back. Well, walking out to the plane, I hand her gear, which gear is, your headset and things like that. Because inside those small planes, if you're not wearing a headset and a mic, you can't talk to each other. It's just too loud. And so I hand her bag, her gear, and she's like, "What's this?" I said, "It's your parachute." And the color left her body. She instantly turned into Casper. I'm like, "It's your parachute." Well, to make matters worse, man, oh my God, this gets so much better. We're in the runway. And we're taking off. We're probably 60 feet off the ground. We just left the runway. I mean, we're not even technically flying yet. And I hear her scream, and I turn around, and there was a screw that fell out of the top lining of the airplane and landed in her lap, and she's holding this, and I'm just like, it'll be okay. So the flight instructor starts laughing too. She was terrified. She was ready to jump out then. If she really had a parachute, she probably would have jumped out then. I mean, from me terrorizing her before she even got on the plane in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, wow, that is scary. It's like there's freaking screws falling out of the plane, people.
How safe is this plane? There shouldn't be screws falling out, damn it.
Yeah.
Oh,
and it wasn't a plane that I normally fly either, so it's like, holy crap, it was one of those overwings, and they're kind of sensitive, so it's like, but it's like, to this day, it's hilarious. I love telling that story. And so does she.
That's hysterical. All right, hey, listen, we've got probably 5-7 minutes left, so I want to give you a chance. Why don't you, for the people that are in here, and for the people that are gonna listen afterwards, I'm getting like a ton of downloads right now, which has been great. So if you want to mention to anyone out there that might listen to this on download, why should they tune into your show? What are some of the topics? I mean, I know some of it's political, but what are some of the other things you talk about? When's your show on? Just do like a little promo for your show so people know what it's about and where they can find it.
Well, if you're easily offended, don't tune into my show, because all I'm going to do is piss you off. The tagline for my show is, if you're not triggered, you're not listening. Right. So that says it all right there. But gearing more towards the lives. In my lives, I tend to stay away from the controversial subjects. I do have, and I hope he shows up. He hasn't communicated back with me in a couple of days, but I do have a really cool interview set up for New Year's Eve. It's a New Year's Eve special I'm doing, where I'm going to be interviewing a real life boxcar super tramp, somebody who travels the United States in railroad boxcars, and he's done this for years. That's his life.
That's awesome.
So it's like, man, I'm sure he's got stories to tell, so I was communicating with him at first. He was really excited. He said, yes, I'll do the show, but I haven't heard from him in a couple of days, even though he has been online. So I have not gotten a confirmation, but man, I'm hoping he pulls through and we end up having that show Friday night. Cause that's really not your normal, podcast interview. And I think that'd be a really great way to kick off the year. So my show Friday Night Mics is usually open discussion. I had call in, and people can call in. We talk about whatever, and that's on Friday nights at 11 p.m. Eastern time.
Now that's cool as heck. I mean, if you think about the experiences that person's had in their lives, I mean, I can imagine, story after story they could tell you about things that would just probably blow your mind. So that's amazing. That's really cool. Really cool.
Yeah, it is. And to answer somebody's questions in the chat, Flying Ham, in fact, he had just ridden trains up the East Coast. He'd come from, I think, Florida, come up through Tennessee and Chattanooga. He spent something like 7 days in the rail yard there, and he's studying the trains from afar, from like the distance of the yard. And trying to learn, hey, when's the best time going to be to get on one of these trains? How do I go about it? So the guy studies the yards when he does this, and then he'll get on his train, figure out which direction he needs to go, and he traveled up to Boston or something like that. So yeah, I'm sure he was on your train, or one of your trains anyway. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that interview, man. I really hope he shows up with that.
No, that's cool. Hey, Black Dragons Radio, I appreciate that. Eric, you want to pop on? Do you have any questions at all for Vinny? Anything you want to ask him?
Well, I don't have any questions I can think of right offhand, but this has certainly been a great show, and and I would certainly encourage new and returning friends of the John DeVito show to definitely check out the Podfather show for Friday nights around 11 p.m. Eastern time, and you might even see him around at other shows, whether it's Revolutionary Bro or the Slightly Serious Show or the It's Doomsday podcast and the Old Man's podcast with Dean, Joe, and Eric, and a couple other friends that do shows, even John Gale and Ralph William and many others at the Gray Area.
Nice. Well, listen, man, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, and I've really enjoyed it. And I'm going to try to get into your show and check it out. Maybe I can make it in, this Friday, because that sounds like that would be a really interesting show.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Now, how is he going to? Is he going to just call in from a phone? So is he actually going to be on a train when he calls you? I'm just kind of wondering about that.
No, he actually traveled up to spend holidays with family. So he's at his mom's house right now, and he does a lot of live social media on his cell phone. So I've told him, hey, you need to download the Podbean app, or because I have sound mixer and studio equipment, I told him if he wanted, he can call in from his cell phone, and I would patch him in through Bluetooth. So we'll see what he does. But you made a comment, if I may, kind of like a closing statement. You made a comment earlier about the Constitution and how a lot of people feel that it's outdated and everything, and I thought I would like to leave a lot of people with. And this is something that I truly believe. The Constitution is timeless. It was written to be timeless. And that's proven in the fact that we can make changes to it. So it is a timeless document. The Constitution itself is an absolutely perfectly executed document, but it's implemented by imperfect people. And that's the problem.
No, I agree 100%. And that's one of the things, let me shut off my applause there. No, that's one of the things that I think about quite a bit. I mean, the men that wrote that document were intelligent enough to understand that in the future, things were going to change. They knew that, in 200 years, 300 years, things would be different. Technology would be different. People would be different. Society would be different. So they created a document that could be amended, that could be added to and changed, and it was a malleable document. So I think you're right. I mean, to describe it as timeless, that's right on the mark. And it really, when I hear people saying how it's an outdated document, that really irritates me. That's something that's really a huge pet peeve of mine, because I don't believe it is. I think it was.
It just shows they don't understand the document.
Right. Exactly. All right, everybody.
Anything that you can update isn't outdated. Yeah. Anything that can be updated isn't outdated.
It's true. It's absolutely true. So, listen, brother, Vinny, I want to thank you very much for coming on. I'm going to let Eric run through some of the other shows that are coming up, and hopefully you'll come back to my show again. I'd love to have you on sometime. Maybe you can call in if I'm doing a freestyle show, and it's been a pleasure to have you on, man. I've enjoyed it.
Man, absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's a true honor.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. All right, Eric, you want to round up some of the shows that are coming up, and maybe I'll give you a little background Jeopardy music, because I like.
Well, of course, coming up on Podbean Live today. I think in the daytime schedule, you've got Freedom Warrior doing his show today, so be on the lookout for him. And the Frankie D show, he'll be live at 3 p.m. Eastern time, so I'm sure you'll probably be seeing Mr. A and Tuddles and Tron Cat there. And then Solid Blue Sister, she should be live around 4 p.m. Eastern time, and John Gale will be live at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And then in prime time, you've got the Slack 82 Alpha at 7 p.m. Eastern. Then comedy podcasts, Low Standards and Pours, and the Beans and Weenie show on opposite each other tonight at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. And of course, tomorrow will be, of course, the final episode of 2021 for the Old Men's Podcast with Dean, Joe, and Eric and John Gale. So those shows should be interesting. And of course, John DeVito will be back tomorrow with Get to Know Your Podcaster guest, Felix from This Swap Doesn't Lie. And his show is normally on Fridays, but we are honored to have him joining us tomorrow. And
hey, Eric, I figured out, remember, he had to write me privately and tell me that I misspelled the name of his show. So I got on and looked, and I was positive I typed it in right. So I went in and retyped it again. Podbean would not let me use the word WAP. Every time I put the word WAP in separately from the other words, they would automatically delete it. So I had to go back in and make it one word with no spaces, and then they allowed the word WAP in. So as an Italian American, I appreciate them trying to protect us, but I thought that was kind of funny that when I put the word WAP in, they would automatically delete it, and I couldn't have it in my title. So that was kind of funny. Anyway.
Well, funny they can't censor like the misspelled F-bombs and the other like vile words that trolls use when they come in to troll people and be real mean to them.
Yeah, I noticed we had one of those clowns in earlier today also. Obviously he'd woken up in his mother's basement and got done masturbating and decided to get on Podbean and type in a couple of, stupid comments. So whatever.
He's out of here.
Yeah. Hey, everybody.
But still coming up on Podbean Live, you've got Dude Sean, you've got Slightly Serious probably coming up later in the week, so be on the lookout for him. But in the new year, we hope to have Mysteries of the Paranormal and the Ralph William podcast back. And then The Only Crazy Lady, she's live on Tuesday afternoons with her tarot card specials. And John DeVito and I would also like to remind podcast friends, new and returning, that with the New Year's holiday this weekend, if you're going to be going out partying, we would like to ask that you please not drink and drive, because we want everybody to arrive alive. We don't want any lives lost this holiday weekend.
Again, I mentioned it, with the name of the show, the Podfather show. I know everyone that's been around for a while remembers our old friend, the Pod God, which was, I think, the other greatest name I've ever heard on Podbean. He went out, I think it was over 4th of July weekend on his boat, had too many drinks, jumped into the water, and he died. So it does happen. Yeah. So be careful. I'm glad you mentioned that, Eric. That's a really good point.
Well, because, if you're going to be out partying and drinking this weekend, instead of getting behind the wheel and asking for like a DUI or DWI charge on your permanent record, we would really ask that you have a designated driver or call a cab.
Yeah, Black Dragons, I really don't drink either. So my plans for New Year's Eve, there will be no alcohol in my plans. It's not, I'm not an alcoholic or anything. I just choose not to drink. I did plenty of that in my 20s, so I don't need to do it anymore. I'm lucky my liver didn't literally fall out of my body in my 20s. It probably should have. But anyway, listen, everybody, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it. And hopefully you come back tomorrow. I'm looking forward for my interview with This WAP Doesn't Lie. And then I do have, it looks like another one. I got to get to my phone, but it looks like I have another one set up for Friday, 11:20. So I'll send Eric the details on that once I've finalized it, and I'll publish that. So hopefully you all join me for that one as well. So love you all, everybody. Take care now.
I will definitely be back for more.
Awesome. I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much. Who wants a little baby laugh? I want a little baby laugh today. So here we go. Oh, yeah. This is my favorite.